Hey guys, this is Sharad. Welcome to REsimpli podcast. Excited to have Paul to Campo on this podcast. I know he does a lot of cool things, so I want to jump into it and learn from him. Paul, welcome to the show, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on, Sharad.
Yeah, thank you for taking time, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you live? What is it that you do? Let's just jump right into it.
Yeah. Let's jump into it. I'll give you my background too. So I assume we're here to talk about copy and follow-up marketing and all that. So my background. So I live in. Answer your question. I live in North Idaho, Coeur d'Alene. I used to live down where you're at right now, which is Chino or Southern California in general. So I got started like everybody back in 2015 with Rich Dad Poor Dad, which escalated to bigger pockets and all that rabbit hole of wholesaling, direct mail, doing everything under the sun, find deals out in Southern California, doing door knocking, cold calling, all that stuff. Then I shifted into flipping mobile homes, into notes, mainly what's called Lonnie deals. It was kind of nobody was really doing it. And I learned about it, tried it, and it was really profitable. So I did a few deals in that. And then land flipping. And then land flipping, I was my most consistent venture. So I did a lot of land flipping back there. Not a lot of people were doing it back then, and created a little volume business back then too. At the same time I was doing all that, I was also a copywriter by kind of as a side hustle, I guess you could say. Fell into it on accident. I was still doing all this as working at W-2. I'd worked for SoCal Gas. I was a foreman for pipeline construction. I was a welder, all that, drove trucks, knuckle dragger, dug holes, all that good stuff. But I was also flipping land. I was writing copy for Carrot as well. They were one of my first clients. And all these little random freelance copywriting gigs I was doing. And then I quit my W-2 job about 2020 and went full into actually freelancing, because the money was there. It was just a time with money kind of thing, kind of the time versus money. It allowed me to have the same kind of income with much more reduced hours of work. Then after that, I created a little service for investors, which I kept seeing people asking me to do this, which was creating follow-up drip sequences, or I like to call it systems, because it's more like systems rather than just a couple of sequences here and there, but creating the custom-based type of sequences for investors.
Got it. Yeah. Everybody knows that money is in the follow-ups. Are you still doing any investing, or you're just primarily focused with helping other investors with setting up, follow-up systems?
Yeah. As far as investing goes, I've taken more of like a armchair approach, lending money. As far as sustaining a volume business, I put that to the side. It was one of those things where what was getting to my revenue faster, and what did I enjoy the most? As far as land flipping, it's great as far as profitability goes, but it was one of those things where I realized it was going to take me like 5 years to get to. I was flipping cheap vacant land. It was going to take me like 5 years to get to where I wanted, and I just hated. To be like frank, I really hated doing it. I really hated every aspect of it. The only thing I really enjoyed is writing an email to my buyers list. That was the only thing I really enjoyed doing. And I did it in a different way than most people do it in land flipping. So then I put that aside and went full force with helping investors with this offer with my service called OmniDrip.
So what is it that you notice? You're working with tons of investors, helping them set up these follow-up systems. Is there anything you notice with the investors that are consistently getting deals versus the ones that are struggling to get deals?
I'm going to say this that everybody's always hears, but the ones that I work with that are really doing well, for one, in their lead funnel, they're getting, and I can only comment about like what I see inside of their CRM. When I set up these sequences, some clients will talk about how they're getting a lot of dead weight type of responses, meaning people who are confused about getting a text message, or cussing them out or telling them to go off the list. Well, that's an indicator that they're getting really bad quality leads from to begin with. So that's number one, is the quality of leads that are coming in. Second, I mean, you hear this all the time, so I'm just going to repeat it, but it's fundamental. It's just the guys are just working the leads that are actually, I've input the system for them, and they're actually working it as a system. They have a way of doing it, and they're consistent about this person goes in this sequence, goes in this bucket. Speed to lead is a big thing in their organization. So I'd say it's just a matter of how consistent they're working, actually working their system, working their sequences, and working their leads.
And then do you notice the investors that you're working with, is it calling the leads versus sending SMS versus sending direct mail as a follow-up, or email? Is there one that you notice tends to work better over other follow-ups, or is it just doesn't matter, follow up, whatever you're comfortable with?
So that's a really good question. As far as like, what do I know what's working best? Is it SMS, email? I don't think there's a direct answer for that. There's just not enough data to say people respond to SMS best. I would, if I were to take a guess though, just looking at what people show me, most of the time they're responding to a SMS directly, or maybe they got a missed call and the seller texts them afterwards. That doesn't mean though. Now I want to like, because I today, yeah, marketing is my bread and butter. Like I manage market people, not just inside of investors. I don't just deal with investors. I deal with as you know coaches and other and SaaS products and print shops and all that. So on a marketing side of things, it's not like just one of those. If we were to see, okay, emails are working best, I wouldn't say, okay, let's shut off SMS. I think that'd be dumb, because everything is working in cohesiveness together. The seller's still seeing the emails that are helping sell, because what we deliver is not just, hey, are you still looking to sell, over and over. It's helping the investor bring his brand up with credibility, bring up the benefits of what a cash offer is. Right, cash offer means all kinds of different things. So I'm bringing up different features and benefits that a cash offer is going to bring to that seller, depending on where they're at. Because there's a whole, I mean, like earlier I said, there's a whole system of this. How I approach all marketing systems, whether it's for an investor, whether it's for e-commerce, whatever it is, I first have to look at what's the journey that prospect and lead's going to take. What are the little sales we have to make, right? In investing, it's we get the lead, they say, yes, I want to hear what your cash offer is. The next sale we have to make is an appointment. Well, there's a bucket for that. There's a sequence for that. There's a call to action for that, right? So the call to action is not asking, let me buy your house. The call to action is, let me get you to the appointment. Let's have you see the offer first. If they miss the appointment, that's a bucket. If they say no because your offer is too low, that's another bucket. All these buckets represent what we can say with the best wording we can say, the next call to action, etc. So kind of went on a tangent there, but I don't know if that answered your
No,
first.
I love, actually, I love that answer. It's not, I think a lot of time, when you get initial response from seller, like the most important goal with that lead is to get the property under contract. And I think a lot of investors tend to just focus on that. I like the idea. I like your approach that you're just taking it incrementally. Like when you get a lead, your next sale is just to get an appointment. Don't
Absolutely.
focus on getting the property under contract, just focus on getting that appointment. I think that's really key, because I feel like it doesn't make you come across so desperate that, hey, you just want to sign the contract, you're missing everything else. I think you have to go as fast as the seller wants to go.
Right. It's qualification, it's steps, it's mini sales. We call it marketing. I'm like, an analogy to this is I'm in a martial arts. I used to do kung fu when I was younger. To get to, like, if you're in MMA and UFC, to get to a certain place, to get to a submission, for example, you don't just wrap your hands around and put them in a choke, right? You have to set yourself up. There's all these little processes you have to do first to get to that point. You have to take them down. You got to get in guard. You got to get into mount. You got to get in their back. So it's the same thing. I mean, we're not like, it's an easier sale to make when you're just asking them, do you just want to see the offer? It's an easier, softer sale to make than let's go buy your house, right? So yeah, everything is little mini sales along the way. Not only is that better for like for the words you use and your process, your own system, but it's also good for your mindset. I've seen people struggle cold calling, for example, and really voice their frustration, saying that they can't find a deal cold calling. But that's a completely wrong mindset. You're not looking for a deal when you're cold calling. You're just looking for a seller, and then you take that seller and you put them into another bucket. You put them into your CRM, and okay, these are now leads, and then you have to move them over to the appointment, and et cetera, et cetera. So when you're prospecting, door knocking, cold calling, whatever it was, you're just looking through the hay to find that needle you can take and do something with that, right? So that's my take always has been my take for marketing and sales. So
No, absolutely. Let me ask you this. So, a lot of leads that you get, I'd say, you send out direct mail. You get people calling in and saying, hey, I got a postcard from you. You make me an offer. And then a lot of times these sellers just like disappear on you, right? They're missing. I have this lead. They called me. They said they were interested. Now, we're not able to get in touch with them. What language are you using? Like, how would you go about getting that seller back into the, into engaging with us?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a combination of different things, but for one, that happens a lot, not because I think that just happens because of human nature. Happens to me when as a business owner and I have an urgent task to do, and I delegate that to somebody, they're working on it and they send over a question for me. I've already put that task on the back burner and I have other fires to put out. I think sellers deal with the same thing. There's something that urges them to inquire about your offer, your cash offer. They do it, but then I see this all the time in the messaging, like when they've ghosted and they've respond back to, hey, sorry, I had other things to deal with. Happens with humans all the time. That whatever urge gave them that initial, whatever emotion gave them that initial urge to respond is now gone. It's not priority anymore. So one thing I would do, first of all, I think that it's not so much the exact language, it's about showing up. There's this idea of friendly familiarity in marketing. It's where you're showing up as like that friendly. There's this old school admin, direct response admin, that put this in analogies that if you're an old this is the 1930s, if you're an old insurance man, you sell insurance and you show up at the same bus every single day to go to work, you see the same people, they know that on that bus you sell insurance. You become trusted more often. Every day you become a person of trust, a person that you can go to buy insurance from. So the idea of me doing follow-up marketing is not so much the same thing, asking for the pitch of, hey, let me buy your house. It's more so giving value almost in every email, voicemail script, or call, or email. And what I mean by giving value, it could be like I mentioned earlier, sending off a benefit that your cash offer does for them, right? It could be there's a message that gets sent out that talks about how construction fees are going up, but we can buy it with as is, no repairs needed, right? So not a huge. I mean, it's not like for us, we take it for granted. Of course, cash means as is, but a lot of people don't think about that or resonates with them. So if they're in a situation, we do this with Ballpoint, for example, or a Ballpoint marketing. So I know you guys do a lot of Ballpoint marketing mailers. So we developed the postcard sequence where I picked out seven different benefits or reasons why somebody would sell, or what the cash offer solves for them. And each postcard has one of those, and that's it. We don't stuff the postcard with all these million and one ways that cash offer is gonna win or is gonna help you. Just one benefit that's important today in today's market. And some people are going to respond to the as is because their house is a hoarder's house. Some people are going to respond to the no commission because they want a higher offer or more money in their pocket, right? So there's all these little benefits and features. So I'm going to hit them with, in the follow-up, I'm going to hit them with these different benefits and features. I might send an email that talks about, actually tells them what are the top rehab items today in today's market. Actually telling them, hey, this is what you need to get top price in your market. I'm going to send them credibility emails or messages, meaning if people are looking for assurance that you're not a scam, so I send them to seller reviews, right? I think that's or credibility packet, right? Ryan Dossi does that a lot. The credibility packets, send them over to something that shows that, hey, people are actually doing business with you, that you're actually local, you're actually real business. So I kind of was a long-tailed answer to your question, like what is the wording I use? For one, it's just friendly familiarity of being that trusted brand. So always giving them value almost every time. And I do ask if I still want to get them to respond, right? So we have humor messages in place. I have certain humor messages just to get an LOL. Even if it's just that's later on in the sequences. I have just simple questions as well. So I don't neglect those. I want them to respond, right? So it's a mixed bag of all kinds of different things. And a lot of times they respond to something very random that I think it wasn't the message in of itself. It was just that you were showing up. So
Right.
that's my answer to that.
Yeah, so my question to you is, you mentioned it was about showing up. So if you had to choose between, let's say, you're sending direct mail to a list, right? It could be text, but I just pick direct mail to a list. You're sending direct mail to a list. You have a choice of either sending 3 postcards that hit, kind of you mentioned, hits each pain point, goes in depth, right? In depth with that, like very well written, like very good copy. So you have list of 1,000. You could either send 3 postcards every other month, right? Do that, or you have this average postcard, nothing fancy, just says, hey, we buy houses, house wanted. I'm sure, you know what kind of talking about, very generic postcard. And you can either send three of these, very well written, or you could send six of the same postcard every month. Which would you pick? Is it the consistency that's more important, or is it like very well written copy and less quantity?
Yeah, I see what you're asking here. First off, I want to say that I'm probably not. I'm not the expert in in this field as far as direct mail testing and all that. I've done my own direct mail
Oh,
with
no,
land.
you could apply to anything. Like,
Yeah,
it could be a very well worded text message versus just
right,
sending the
right.
same text message. Hey, I'm still interested in buying your house. I'm still
That's
interested versus, kind of what you have. You have very, very well written text messages with the
what's more
follow up.
important. The question is,
Yeah.
what's more important, volume or the
The
quality?
quality. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
I would say volume is probably more important, right? Volume would be
Right.
more important. I think when then you have to start asking the question, is my quality or content hurting because I'm sending so much volume, right? Because there's like if you're doing text messaging, cold text messaging, for example, and you're doing volume, then with testing, you can only really test with lots and lots of volume anyway. So I would say start with a lot of volume and then narrow down to getting your quality right. So.
Right. And as you've been helping investors for a few years now, as the market is shifting, we're in this era of like very high interest rate and also all these regulations around sending cold text messages. Kind of what you have seen change with marketing for real estate investors over the last 2 or 3 years, and where do you see marketing going for real estate investors? Looking 6 months to a year out, you'll say, hey, if you want to be successful, like start focusing on this. Have you kind of curious about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is just my opinion, not so much like factual, because again, like I'm not so much in the market sending out. Like I'm not doing an $80,000 budget. I'm not for a marketing budget for people. So I'm not in the weeds looking at that data. So this is just my opinion, not so much factual. But my opinion is that not much changes as far as what strategies are going to be used. Obviously, SMS is going to change. I mean, you've been front lines on that as far as the regulations of cold text messaging. That obviously has to change. So we have to shift to there. So prices might, if depending on how many people were doing cold messaging and how many people like pivot over to other avenues, pricing of those marketing strategies might change. But I don't think it changes much except for maybe the wording you use. So when I say the wording is like, so Ryan and I have done this quite a bit, like back in 2 or 3 years ago, when cash offers was pretty plentiful, you can get cash offers anywhere on the MLS. If your messaging is really wrapped around the whole cash thing, then it's a lot less valuable. It's not, just doesn't stand out very well. So when he did it back then, was we would do like no realtor fees, commission free type of messaging. I mean, it means the same thing, right? It means the same thing as cash, but or direct to seller. But I mean, it catches the eye a little better to get an initial response. So what I would say is what changes is more what happens in the market, what is it in your offer that attracts better? So if days on market getting larger, less buyers, or just taking longer to sell, then something is that shows that you're going to buy it in X amount of days, and that's going to be a lot more beneficial and a lot more appealing to sellers. So that's my opinion on that.
Right. No, absolutely. I think the more you can tailor your message to kind of what's going on in the market, especially like with people struggling with, high interest rate, for example, like a lot of people had taken, 5 year, 7 year loan, a few years ago, and now as they're getting adjusted at a higher interest rate, if you can appeal to those people, if you like when we had COVID scare, if you're sending messages related to that, I think that definitely gets better response. But yeah, I mean, like for us, when we have investors come to us and say, hey, what marketing should I do? Should I do direct mail, cold calling, PPC? Our response is, if you're not sure what marketing you should do the one that you can stick with the longest. I think at the end of the day, you'll agree that everything works at the end of the day. It just, you have to stick with it long enough. Is that something you notice also?
Absolutely. I think that's 100%. The rules and principles of that in marketing for investing works the same all around. I think it's also what you have a budget for to start off with. I think a lot of people, saying that you got to have an idea of what each channel is going to ask of you from the beginning. Each channel is going to have different ROI, but I don't think that's a necessarily, hey, that's a bad thing. I think ideally what you want to be is you have multiple channels going on. We've seen in marketing is that when you start adding these different channels, things go up. When you start spending more, actually, sometimes when you start spending more, your ROI increases exponentially. And that's just because a matter of exposure. More people are going to be seeing you, talking about you. The agent's going to and it's just a matter of also you doing more deals. Agents are know about you in the market. They're going to talk about it to somebody else. They're going to refer you, etc. So just the more stuff you have out there, the more exponentially it's going to work in your favor. And that's not measurable. That's the thing. Those things are not. You can't really track that stuff. I'm direct response at heart. What direct response means is like everything is tracked, everything is measured. But in today's age, I remember hearing a talk from the guy who's a marketing guru over there at Pro Acne Cream. He's well known in the whole direct response marketing genre. And he was talking about they got to a point where they don't know where their customer comes from anymore, because they don't know if they clicked the email because they saw the ad on TV or they heard the radio, or they put the email aside and they looked at one of their cards and they put it down later and they saw TV. So it's just hard to track everything now. Ideally that's where you want to be, because what you see in the long run is obviously for most investors are going to be starting out. They're probably only doing one channel. So what I'm talking about here is at a higher level, but the idea that's what you want to get to is where you're not worried about how this marketing channel costs me $3,000 per deal. This one costs me $4,000. Therefore, I'm going to shut off the $4,000 one. That's not that's not how it works. Everything works it's like the rising the rising tide lifts all boats in this case. So
sure. No, that's a great answer, man. All right, man. Shifting some gears there. What do you do for fun?
What I do for fun? That's a really good question. I'm trying to figure that out too. I'm trying to figure that out for myself. Well, I got 4 kids, so I
How old
try
are
to.
they?
They're 3, 6, 8, and 10.
Oh,
So
cool. Yeah.
yeah, they're
Must
really
keep you very busy.
yeah. So so try to get involved with them a little more often. I mean, so I love where I live now, so I try to get out and get out to the lake and to downtown and hang out over there. I've been actually, I mean, I enjoy reading too. I try to get as much reading as I can. I just love reading books. And so one thing this isn't talked about a lot in real estate, but in real estate investing, but I've been actually diving into stock analysis and stock investing, just because I've been fascinated the way Warren Buffett. I don't know. I've been fascinated with Warren Buffett lately, and been reading his bio and then reading how he does things, how he analyzes. I don't see it much different than real estate. How they analyze businesses and how they buy these assets. So I've been diving into that and learning how he's doing that. So yeah,
Keep me
I'm not out
Keep me
surfing.
posted on any awesome stock tips that you come across. All right. Yeah.
Right. So who knows when that will be. That's more, I treat it as a hobby, because
Yeah.
I don't want it. I know that stock analysis is a business of itself. So I can get carried away with having too many, they say pumpkin vines, right? I think there's an analogy I heard from carrot. Multiple pumpkins and if you have too many pumpkins snipping or growing, all of them are going to be dwarf pumpkins, so you got to snip some of them off. So I treat it as a hobby, not as a business. I'm a big believer in the one thing principle, the one thing book, right? So really putting that to heart every single week, making sure that whatever tasks I have is on the one big theme to grow my own business, or whatever goal I have, and that's when I focus on what's the one task, etc. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot of fun stuff that I do besides hanging out with my kids, hanging out in downtown. Jiu-jitsu, I do jiu-jitsu as well. I guess that's another, I should have mentioned that, but that's what I do for fun as well. So
nice. All right. Yeah. You mentioned some books there. What's the one book that's been most influential in your life? It could be business or personal, doesn't matter.
Oh man, I always hate answering these questions, because there's like I guess because
You could name more than one if
Yeah.
if
So
there's yeah.
so I like so here's I think what a lot of people will benefit from. I like reading biographies actually of great men, and I learned that from an old email marketer by the name of Ben Settle, who reads a lot of biographies. And so I think they're a drag to read. I get it. So they're long and they can be boring because they go into sections that you don't really care about. But if you can dive into the life of John D. Rockefeller, I think it's a really fascinating person to follow and read. And on a business standpoint, to read how he did business, how his character in running a business, how he was so, some of the top business people, Carnegie, Rockefeller, Ford, they were really mindful of accounting. They started off as bookkeepers and accountants. And so they're really, I can't think of another word, but anal about costs, about expenses and costs, and minimizing that, and keeping a profitable margin. And I think a lot of investors, especially ones I've worked around, that's kind of put to the side, and it's about growth and more revenue, more deal flow and more deal flow. But sometimes the profit's right in front of you. It's right in front of you. You just can't see it because you have too many expenses that have piled up. So those are some read biographies. I think those are great. They're just a drag. There's some podcasts out there. I think The Founder is a podcast that he actually breaks down some of these and makes it into a 30-minute audio of that book. So they're out there. But I'm a big Dan Kennedy fanboy as far as marketing books go. So for people who are doing dispo, who are doing selling to cash buyers, I recommend the book Marketing to the Affluent by Dan Kennedy. Because at the end of the day, cash buyers are the affluent, so you're selling to them. So getting into their psychology, getting in their world, they're no different than any other. They're not aliens. They're like any other affluent class. So getting in touch a little better with them. So those are the two things I recommend for books.
Awesome, man. If you could spend a day with anyone, dead or alive, who would you want to spend the day with and why?
That's a really good question. I'd say Albert Einstein. I have a picture right here of him. That's why I bring it up. I'm reading his biography. And why would I spend a time with him? I'm big into knowing yourself and taking your personality. I've taken every personality test out, almost every personality test out there, PI and all that stuff. And Merton Myers-Briggs, I should say. He's falls in the same kind of category as me, sort of. I'm not saying I'm a genius like him, in especially in math. I'm not a genius in math, but I would spend time with him because I'm just fascinated with the topic of physics and science. And I kind of geek out on that stuff. So I would just spend some time just because I'm reading his book right now, kind of fascinated by it. So
That's awesome, man. How can someone who's listening to this podcast get in touch with you?
yeah, absolutely. So they can head over to my site. They can get samples and a demo of how all this follow-up marketing works at omnidrip.com, and they could hit me up from there. So if they have any questions about anything, just send it to me. I'm going to always ask them to get on the email list because a lot of times my auto flows answer those questions. I'll try to answer the best I can. So
Awesome, man. And we'll put all that information in the show notes for anybody. Yeah. Awesome, Paul. Thank you so much for being on the show, man. It's been really great. Thank you for sharing information and experience, from your perspective on kind of what you're noticing working for real estate investors. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on.